Hey, hi everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I'm joining you from Vancouver, Canada today. And I'm a social psychologist by training, but I teach in marketing and behavioral science. So I'm really interested in how do we get people. So when we're talking about some of these ideas around regenerative marketing or regenerative business, how do we get people to kind of change their behaviors to kind of get in line with those kinds of ideas? Um, and I like that idea of contributor. I have to call them consumers when I'm publishing in marketing journals, but they're people, right? So when I talk about behavior change, I'm just talking about people. One of the things I find again and again in the research that I do is that most people have positive attitudes and intentions around being more sustainable. So when you ask them, they say they want to be sustainable. They care. They actually care about climate change. The majority of people care. They're worried and they want to change things. However, when you look at behaviors, people don't always follow through with their behaviors. And this is just one example from a recent survey and study where 80% of consumers say they want to make more sustainable choices and switch out to do more sustainable behaviors. But if there's any kind of a cost associated with it, like a price premium, really not very many people do it. Only about 4% of people do these behaviors. And I'm not going to get into the why today because we just don't have time. But what I will do is talk a little bit about maybe some potential solutions to get people to shift their behaviors to be more sustainable. And so what we did in some of our research is we went in and we did a systematic review of the research from consumer behavior, marketing, psychology, and some behavioral economics, and basically looked at what are the factors that actually get people to change their behaviors to be more sustainable. And we took a broad view of consumer behavior. It doesn't just mean buying stuff. It means what are you choosing? What kind of behaviors are you doing when you're using products? How do you dispose of products? All those kinds of things. So it's not just buying stuff. And what we kind of find is that there's these 5 factors that are important, and within each one, there's a lot of nuance. But I'll just tell you about the factors today, just to give you kind of a flavor for what they are. And the framework that we created is called SHIFT, and the idea is that each letter in the acronym SHIFT stands for one of our factors. So the first one is social influence. And this seems to be very powerful in the domain of getting people to be more sustainable. So basically, social influence is how we're impacted by other people. So people tend to engage in more sustainable behaviors when they see other people doing sustainable behaviors, something called descriptive norms, when they believe others want them to be sustainable, and even just the presence of other people makes people more likely to engage in sustainable behaviors. The second one is habit formation, which is all about this idea that a lot of the things we do that aren't sustainable are just these sort of automatic behaviors that we've learned, and they kind of get activated in familiar context in response to cues in those contexts. And we just kind of automatically do these things without thinking about them. And that's part of why we get those intention action gaps, right? We set our intentions when we're thinking really carefully. But in our day-to-day lives, as we're doing actions, we often sort of just do things habitually without even thinking about what and why we're doing them. So there's some different things you can do to shape habits. So things like making behaviors as easy as possible. So can you set things as a default action so that people do the more sustainable thing, for example? The third one is individual self. So this is really understanding what's really important to the person, or if you're communicating out your target audience. Some people really care about sustainability, and that's top of mind for them. So communicating about, green values and the sustainable attributes of a behavior can be important. But sometimes it's figuring out what is important to the person that is linked to sustainability. So maybe it's not sustainability per se, but something else, some other identity or some other value is important to the person. So maybe they care about family, or maybe they care about spending time in nature, maybe they care about saving money. All of those things can be linked to sustainability. So really understanding what resonates with your target audience. The other one I have there is feelings and cognition, which is all about people's emotions and their thoughts about sustainability. And obviously there's a lot under that category. The one thing I often talk about with feelings is that marketers seem to first use guilt and fear to tell people about sustainability and to try to change behaviors. And what the research seems to show is that some degree of negative information can sort of motivate the desire to change. But if it's too high, if it's too intense, it actually kind of can backfire. People just won't listen to that information. So thinking about other types of emotions that can be used too. So we find that positive things like hope can be effective in changing behavior. And things like feelings of transcendence. So basically feeling connected to a broader, bigger world that's out there. So we have some studies where we find that when people are in nature, they feel more transcendent and they're more likely to care about things like sustainability and helping others. And then the last one there is tangibility. And so tangibility is all around this idea that when you ask people to be sustainable or you use a word like sustainability, for most people, it's a very abstract concept. And what I mean by that is people don't really know what behaviors they should do. The outcomes seem far away. They seem uncertain. And it's just hard for people to grasp these kinds of concepts. And so anything you can do to communicate the details. So what are the specific behaviors I could do? Or what if I did the behavior, or perhaps if a collective, a big group of people all did this behavior, what would the impact look like? And so giving as specific examples and details as possible tends to make people more likely to shift their behaviors. So that was a very quick overview of the shift factors. So hopefully I convinced you that those 5 factors can be persuasive in getting people to change their behaviors to be more sustainable.